The NYPD fuming over this moment in Washington Square Park during the blizzard Monday. What was supposed to be a fun, massive snowball fight resulted in police officers getting targeted, hit in the face. Some ended up with cuts and had to be taken to the hospital to be checked out. NYPD Commissioner Jessica Tisch's reaction was swift, saying on social media, "I want to be very clear. This behavior depicted is disgraceful and it is criminal. Our detectives are investigating this matter." But Mayor Zohran Mamdani at a news conference this afternoon taking a different stance.
From the videos that I've seen, it looks like a snowball fight.
The Police Benevolent Association, the union representing NYPD's rank and file, says 2 officers were surrounded by multiple adults who pelted them intentionally.
The mayor needs to come out and condemn this. He needs to say that this is wrong. Right now, he's sending a horrible message.
What I saw yesterday in these videos was a snowball fight that got out of hand. I believe that our officers, just like any city workers, deserve respect. And once again, I think these are the views that I've shared both kind of in public as well as in any conversations I've had.
Now, police say they're currently searching for these 4 suspects, all of whom are accused of throwing those snowballs and chunks of ice at those officers. The PBA of New York City also releasing this statement right here, blasting Mamdani's response to what they call an attack on police officers, writing his comments represent a complete failure of leadership and sends a dangerous message.
Guzman Coulibaly hid his face from photographers as he left the 6th precinct, the first of at least 4 people identified from cell phone video to face charges after Monday's melee in Washington Square Park. 2 police officers were injured and several others were covered in snow and ice. Today, Governor Kathy Hochul applauded the arrest.
Our police officers put themselves in harm's way every single day, and there is no circumstance where it's okay to throw anything at a police officer, so that is appropriate.
Coulibaly is 27 years old and a resident of the Bronx, charged with assaulting a police officer, disorderly conduct, and obstruction.
Snowball face-off drama. Cops arrested a guy they say pelted them with snowballs in New York City, but when that suspect appeared before a judge, the charge was reduced. As Ann Ricogliano reports, that did not sit well with the sea of blue at the courthouse.
A line of cops file into court there to go face to face with a suspect accused of participating in that epic snowball fight during the great blizzard of 2026. 2 officers were taken to the hospital after they were pelted with snowballs. But now a controversy has erupted after prosecutors declined to charge the 27-year-old suspect with felony assault. Instead, he faces lesser misdemeanor charges, obstructing governmental administration and harassment. The head of the police union spoke after the hearing.
Why is this being downplayed right now? We need answers.
He slammed the snowball throwers.
They came after these police officers, pelting them with ice, rocks. The ice was packed with rocks.
To all units, proceed to your post assignments. All units, proceed to your post assignments.
That's the sound of the police. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the beast.
Yeah, baby. It's episode 21 of Probable Cause on March 3rd, 2026. Jeff Norman and the FBI whistleblower himself, Greg Dillon, with you as we always are on Tuesday nights. And our special guest tonight is Tom Smith. He is a retired New York Police Department detective. He did it for only 30 years. And for the last 17 of those years, he was a member of the FBI NYPD Joint Terrorism Task Force. He is currently the co-host, along with Mr. Dan Murphy, of the popular podcast Gold Shields. Good evening to you, Dan. And not Dan, he's not here. Where's Dan? Good evening to you, Tom. And good evening. I had a wardrobe malfunction, as you guys know, so I'm completely out of sorts. How are you guys doing? Okay?
Very good. And thank you both for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it.
It is a pleasure to have you. So is it or is it not just a snowball fight? Let me try to endear myself. You guys were talking, macho cop talk before we started. I'm just a wimp. I guess the closest I can come is that one time I called 911. I don't know if that counts for much. But I'm on your side here, even though some of the audience is going to call me a bootlicker. That's happened before. I don't care. I don't think that what Mandami said even makes sense. It's given the context of it. If he had, if somebody had been convicted already, he would make the point of, hey, it was just a snowball fight to maybe argue for a relatively light sentence, or if there was a debate about whether somebody should be charged with a relatively minor crime versus a more severe one, then I could see him saying it. But if the conversation is about, is it any sort of a public offense versus none at all, it doesn't make any sense at all. To me, it's like a boxer who punches somebody outside of the boxing ring. And then he says, hey, it's just boxing. Well, it's just boxing if your opponent agrees to a boxing match with you. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, it isn't. Same with a snowball fight. I don't think those police officers signed up for a snowball fight, did they?
No, and you know what? There's so many things that are wrong with the scenario, and B, what he said. You can't put yourself out there with half a brain cell and look at that and say it's a snowball fight. It's not. I mean, it was obvious to everyone who watched it. It was an assault, and that's what it was. They tried everything they could to hurt those officers. That was the point of it. It wasn't to have fun. It wasn't to have a good time in the snow. It was to hurt the officers. And the other thing they were doing is seeing how much they could get away with. Because, listen, I've said this for years. Criminals pay attention to who elected officials are and their policies and what they can get away with. And they will push that envelope to the end because they know, especially in New York, between Bragg and now Mamdani, they're going to get away with a lot. And that makes everyone in New York, not just the NYPD, every resident, every tourist coming into the city now has a target on their back and is on every bad guy's radar because they know now they don't just have to deal with Alvin Bragg in the DA's office. Now he's got a partner that is so anti-police and anti-law and crime. What's the future in New York City now?
I'm going there in May. So if I need help, let's say somebody hassles me on the subway or whatever, and I need help, do I have to worry about the police not responding because their morale is low?
No, absolutely not. That is the one thing about the NYPD. All right. I spent 30 years there for a reason, and they're still my family. They are still my brothers and sisters. And no matter what goes on in the city, whether whoever's in City Hall, whoever the police commissioner is, there is not one cop on that street that is not going to do their job. All right. They ignore that. They ignore who's in there when it's time, when the bell rings and it's time to work. They put all that to the side and they still do their job. That's why they are who they are.
Greg, you were a Branford, Connecticut cop, which is a very idyllic sort of suburban
compared to the precincts in New York. Yeah, I mean, our department was not the size of their smallest precinct.
Can you relate to this at all? Was morale an issue? Did you have to worry about, the politicians or your superiors backing you up when the townsfolks turned against you?
Once in a while, a politically connected, long-time Branford, family, if you gave out a ticket or you made an arrest, you may hear some pushback, but it wasn't overt. I mean, you'd get a scowl from a supervisor, that type of a thing. But I mean, it wasn't a regular thing. But it could happen on occasion. But you just brushed it off and you ignored it for the most part. The thing that troubled me with Mandami is he keeps trying to color this as a snowball fight, and a fight is mutual combat. Right. That would be like trying to call a stoning a fight. It's like it's not a fight if one person or a group of people can't fight back and have to suffer that type of physical attack. I mean, number one, it's humiliating, and number two, it's dangerous. And for Mandami to not at least try to show more sympathy or empathy for the New York City Police Department. I mean, I was very, very happy to see, and Tom, I'm thinking you'll probably agree with me, that Commissioner Tisch took a different position and a different stance on it and seemed to publicly support the NYPD on this, right?
Yeah, and I don't think she doesn't have a choice. I mean, she's the police commissioner of the largest, best police department in the world. You better stand behind your cops, or else you're going to lose them. There's one thing about the NYPD. It's very simple. All right, we're very simple people. Have our back. The pay, the danger, the sacrifice, all that we got. We understand it. Have our back when something like this happens, because that's what gets everyone paying attention and makes them or eases them into doing their job to the highest level they can. If you don't have someone that has our back, you're going to pull back a little bit about that level that you're going to jump into, because you're worried about what could happen. And I'm glad, she finally did. She came out, and talked about her cops, her police department. And those are the words that are important. And you hope that she sticks to that, and, he doesn't get fired up over that and they have a falling out or whatever might come about that because of just politics. She's in a appointed position. She can come and go with the day changing, so we'll see what that does and how he responds to that with her kind of going against everything he said. But I'm sure there's a bunch of cops out there that were happy to hear it.
Well, Tom, my concern. I'm sorry, Jeff. Go ahead.
You go ahead, Greg.
No, my concern is that she's going to grow tired of the conflict with the mayor and resign, and then he'll have the opportunity to appoint someone that he favors, who is definitely not going to have the back of the police department.
Right, absolutely right, and that's the political nonsense that happens at that level. I've said it for forever. There's certain careers that politics should not get involved with. Law enforcement, the medical field, education. Once politics gets themselves into that, it becomes a disaster. Yeah. Especially on the negative side. When he has a history, all right, you can't take away the tweets, you can't take away the social media posts that he had years ago about calling us wicked and racist, evil, and the worst people walking the earth.
Yep.
But what gets me about that, guys, is he all of a sudden is running to be mayor of New York. And all of a sudden comes out and goes, no, I support the police. No one had the guts to stand in front of him and ask him and say, why? Why? What was the epiphany that took you from hating the NYPD to now all of a sudden you support them?
Wasn't it more specific, about defunding the police? Wasn't that the real?
Oh, that was part of it. That was one thing. But he called us a variety of vile names in his social media posts. But then again,
that's standard in politics, not specifically as it regards the police, but it's pretty standard in politics to change your position as you need to once you read the room, so to speak. So I think he just said a very standard thing. Well, it's not as the way he currently feels. I guess you're saying he should have been pressed more. Why did you change your mind?
Absolutely. You're gonna, you're running for the thing in New York. Okay, you're not just running for mayor. The mayor oversees the NYPD, the largest police department in the world. You can't be against the largest, best police department in the world and then say, yeah, okay, yeah, I support you now because I need votes. That doesn't fly with me. And listen, no one's going to forget all the other stuff that he said. That's never going to go away. He may think it is, but it's not. It's always going to creep back into a conversation.
Somerville John, one of our favorite regulars, is pointing out that the previous mayor was also an ex-cop. So I'm sure
he was he retired at the rank of captain.
And Jessica Tisch was the commissioner under him as well. And my understanding is Mondami kept her on as sort of a way of reassuring the police that he supports them.
Right. And you know what? At the time, I think it was a good move for the NYPD because it's established. It's no one new. There's no mystery involved. You know how she works. You know her policies and how she was running the police department. You just hope it sticks to that. And he doesn't creep his way into that, which he's trying to do with getting rid of certain units that are important to the NYPD that he wants to do away with. And you hope she just stands her ground and sticks to her guns and she's the boss.
You're talking about the SRG, the strategy, what's it called?
Strategic Response Group.
Strategic Response Group, right. And that is, I'm sorry, that's the wrong one. I think I have a video of him talking about that. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I think the issue there, well, let's hear it from him, actually.
Yes, I continue to believe that we need to disband the SRG. And I'm currently in conversations with the police commissioner about the ways in which we can do so that are operational. And I believe that we should do so not on the basis of any fiscal need, but frankly on the need to decouple the counterterrorism responsibilities within the department from police response to First Amendment exercise.
Is that a valid point? Because they do have that dual responsibility of being charged with counterterrorism as well as, I guess, tamping down tensions at protests and so forth. Is that a valid point?
No, because they have a small part in the counterterrorism world. They will respond like everyone in the city will if something bad happens in the city. Their responsibility to show up to these certain protests. Now, here's the difference between the disorder control guys and SRG. Okay, when you have a full-blown meltdown riot like we had a couple of years ago, during the summer and all that, SRG is there to make sure not just the protesters, but everyone else in that neighborhood is safe. The store owners, the pedestrians, the residents, they're there to make sure they're okay, and to back up the cops who are there. You take that away, there's one line when you have a full-blown riot. One line. That goes down, the city's theirs. Neighborhoods are theirs. All right, SRG is specifically trained to take care of situations like that. They will respond to high impact crimes, a mass shooting, a terrorist attack. And that's what they're there for. So to just blow it off as, well, we're going to rearrange that. Rearrange it with what? With what? Then you just have the guys on patrol. His explanations of explaining things, he just blows off. And he needs to be held to the fire and explain things. Like, let someone ask him, why don't you, while you're standing at explain to everyone what SRG actually does? And he won't be able to. I'm telling you, he won't. But that's what needs to be done. They just let him talk and let him get away with not making sense in the policies he's trying to invoke, which is going to affect the city.
Tom, he reminds me of a snake charmer almost. I mean, he smiles, he makes good eye contact. He has a sort of a pleasant look on his face. But if you analyze what he's saying, there's nothing to it. He just looks and sounds very good when he's saying it. I mean, he reminds me in some instances of Barack Obama, where there were a lot of platitudes and a lot of smoke, but because he had such a pleasant demeanor and an open, engaging way about him, it seemed very palatable. But when you really studied what he was saying, none of it really made any sense, and it was almost misleading when you figured it out.
Oh, right. And for me, I can and the thousands of retirees and cops who are on the streets see right through that. But the people who don't understand it buy it, and that's the problem. You have the majority of people in New York don't know how the NYPD works, specific groups and specific teams and details and all that. So when he gets up alone by himself and doesn't get challenged to it, they're going to listen to him.
Yeah.
I think Tom, they know more in New York how it runs than in other cities. We were talking on one of the other podcasts last week about Los Angeles by comparison. I've lived in both New York and Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, half the people don't even know who the mayor is at any given moment. Right. Whereas in New York, it's like a very tabloidy kind of city. The front page of the New York Post and the Daily News is kind of like on everyone's mind. So I think, would you agree with that to compare to the averages? They do understand how it works?
Oh, yeah. And you're right, because, New York, things that happen in New York resonate throughout the country. Economically, on a law enforcement level, policy level, things that happen in New York go across this country. And that's why people understand New York a little bit more. LA is, LA in a different animal, two completely different cities, run differently, different mentalities, all that, and just the size of them. But New York is that important because I think at one point we're like a third of the economics in this country is in New York, for the entire nation. So a lot goes on in New York that, like I said, resonates around the country. And that's why people know it a little bit better.
Well, Greg was saying earlier today that the NYPD has counterterrorism responsibilities that other cities don't worry about. You want to ask him about that, Greg?
No, I mean, I was always impressed with all my reading and talking to other people that my understanding is the New York City Police Department is the only non-federal law enforcement agency that independently has personnel go overseas and meet with with law enforcement heads and get involved in operations. Am I right on that, Tom? I mean, I don't think any other city in the country is proactive as New York is.
No, not at all. And all that took place after 9/11 because, we knew it before 9/11, but after 9/11 solidified it. We're the number one target in this country, New York.
Mm-hmm.
So being that New York, the NYPD is the largest, we have the resources and the experience to take our experience and bring it around the world. And they came up with a idea and they came up with a way to do it that we were embedded in certain embassies around the world. Those officers from the intelligence unit, high level security clearance. And what that was instead of relying on the numerous 3-letter agencies that we have running around this country, we're going to get threat streams directly from that nation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything involving New York, anything involving the country, especially New York, obviously, we will get it firsthand and then, sent here that we can act on. And it was a absolute brilliant way to get intelligence into us quickly. And we were working with, I was in JTTF at the time. So we were getting that intel as well. So now we're getting the intelligence and then we start doing cases. We start doing surveillances. We start opening up cases on a world scale now because of the firsthand intel we were getting from around the world.
But Tom, now let me ask you this. Me having been on both sides of the fence, my understanding was this created some friction with the FBI as they resented sort of being on equal footing with a non-federal law enforcement agency. Did I get that right or not?
Yeah, it was more at first.
In the beginning, correct.
Yeah, because, and I get it, and we all understood it. Even being in JTTF, we would goof around and look at each other, go, how are we getting away with this? Like, how is this actually working? But then the results were what did it. They weren't just hanging out in another country, in an embassy, in a cubicle. They were working their tails off to get the proper intel to us. And the FBI saw the results and it worked out and they went, okay, maybe this will work. That's why they were embedded in the embassies, working with ALATs and working with, the FBI teams that were already at embassies. So their relationship.
Just explain what the ALATs is for the audience, please, because they may not know the term.
It's a official attaché, which is kind of the head of the embassy for the United States and the bureau, pretty much. So you have to have a boss, you have to have a supervisor there, and the ALAT is that, and you have a legal attaché, which is above him, which is the ultimate boss. ALATs, I think, do a little bit more work than the legates. But those relationships became stronger.
Mm-hmm.
The work became better. The intel was getting flushed out and to us the right way, and it worked. And, if you look at the amount of terrorist attacks that were stopped since 9/11 in this country were a result of intelligence gathering from other countries and sent here.
Well, one thing that was not a big deal when you were part of the joint task force was drones. Nowadays, drones are a big deal. I was surprised to learn that there is no authority even at this point that the police department in New York has to take down drones.
Yeah.
Are you aware of this?
Well, they don't have the authority to. Is that what you said?
Right. And now, and they're saying now they expect to be getting the authority soon, but at the moment they don't.
Yeah, you have to keep up with technology today, and not all technology is for good purposes. So that's what has to be addressed. And if there's drones, and operated by someone that is committing crimes or trying to do intel into where crimes could be committed, then, actions have to be taken to protect everyone, protect the cops, protect neighborhoods in that. Technology is great, but there are many out there that use it for the wrong reasons.
That's Jessica Tisch right there. Is she well respected by the average cop on the beat as well as the NYPD brass?
I don't, not being there for, I retired in 2020, so I never worked under her. What I will say is all I hear from people is the fact of backing us up and having that respect that's needed to run that department. And in order to do your job the right way, I think you have to have that respect from the men and women on the street. If you don't, it is very hard to get back. All right. Once you get to a point of it being gone, it's very hard to get back. There is a point in the NYPD in some avenues that she never wore a shield. She never wore a uniform. She was never involved in the stuff that we do. To get over that hurdle sometimes takes a while, and I think she has to work twice as hard to get past that. When we had many, Greg, we had many commissioners from other states and other cities that would come in and be the commissioner of the NYPD. And that, again, even with them, not just pointing out Jessica Tisch, even with them, it took a while, for the acceptance of the NYPD.
I mean, if you have sort of a team approach and, you're a manager and you listen to the expertise of people who actually have the experience, it can be done. RFK Jr. is experiencing some of the same skepticism as head of HHS. I remember probably the most famous and most respected, I guess it was executive director was his title of the ACLU, is Ira Glasser. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he was never an attorney, but he really understood the law and he did a good job. So it is possible. What about the governor? She seemed to have said the right thing in this case, but I don't really know. I'm sure there's a bigger picture to it. You're already smiling. What's the story with her?
The bigger picture is there's an election in November. That's the bigger picture. Kathy Hochul has a very bad track record of saying what's needed to be said when there's an election coming up. So I don't really lay a lot of weight on her backing of us. She talked about a lot, further to go to get respect. She's got a lot of work to do, but her in an election year, it's about a 10% read on that.
Well, there's one feather in her cap.
There you go.
One feather in her cap. Did you notice that in that opening clip, she was talking in front of a few bottles of wine, as am I. So here, let me show you what I'm talking about.
Kathy Hochul applauded
Look at
the
that.
arrest.
Our police officers put themselves in harm's way every single day.
But I have a much nicer wine rack. She just has bottles sitting on a table.
You know what, though? Just going back to what she said and just hearing her again, Greg, I'm sorry, just real quick. I think it would be so smart of her to get on the side of the NYPD, because you have to read the room. You have to read what's going on in New York City. The sentiment that the mayor is putting out there as being against the NYPD is right out in front of everyone. If she's smart, do the complete opposite and get behind the cops, which, listen, if she said that and she means it and it's from her heart, cool. Everyone's okay with that, but don't do it in an election year. Get reelected in November, then January, flip the switch.
Yeah, it contradicts, though, her past remarks. that she has a history of. So that's why I don't
Are
think
you guys talking about like when there have been demonstrations that she'd side with the protesters, that sort of thing?
Well, there's a lot. I mean, God.
In other words, how does one go against the police when you're the governor? That's what I'm asking.
Well, you're not, you're second guessing them. You're not funding them. You're not speaking up when you have like Mamdani come out and go, well, we're going to do away with this unit. No, time out. No, we're not. We need that. That's what I mean. Don't just cave into everything he's putting out there. If you're going to back the police up, you don't do it 15%, 40%. You do it 100%. If you're going to be behind the police, you have to do it 100%. And if she puts that out there, she's going to have a good ally in New York City.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's much of a political downside to backing the police, is there?
It depends. I mean, New York is very sectioned
I'm talking
off.
about New York State, not just New York
Well,
City.
New York State, no. And that's what I mean. There is so much respect for the cops in New York State. That's what I mean. If she puts herself out there and backs us up, it's going to do good for her. Because the majority, the way high majority of people that reside in New York State are pro-police. That's what I meant by that.
Even in the cities, I think when there's no particular controversy percolating, it doesn't seem like it's that big a risk to back the police. I think it becomes an issue only when you have like what was going on in Minneapolis, or you have, the Black Lives Matter protests or whatever it might be. But if there's no particular controversy going on, I don't even think it's a big downside in New York City. Am I wrong?
No, I think it's, there's certain groups, there's certain age groups that, are going to be against the police no matter what, because they're listening to someone like Mamdani. They think their news cycle is TikTok. So they're listening to that thinking that's real. But the high majority of people that reside in New York City back the NYPD.
Why did, since Mamdani gave a bad answer, which probably wasn't, the truth, I'll leave it to you guys. Does he want to disband the SRG because of past controversies when they were accused of using excessive force? Is that the real reason?
Greg, you want me?
Well, I mean, my understanding is part of it is based on the rumor or the allegation that they were targeting mosques at one point. They were like stereotyping, I guess, or profiling is the word I was looking for. And I think that was part of his initial discomfort with the group.
Yeah, and I think Mamdani wants protests to be protests. He doesn't want them to stop. You notice what he said there. We're going to get rid of SRG because of the First Amendment. They have nothing to do with one another. Zero. No one's ever going to stop. No police unit in the NYPD or anywhere for that matter is going to stop you from exercising your First Amendment rights. All right. But when the First Amendment rights go into throwing bottles at a cop or burning something or looting something, then that's out the window. Then that is no longer your constitutional right. And that's why SRG is there, to make sure you want to carry stuff, march, do all that, knock yourself out. No one's ever going to have a problem with that. It's the next level that gets done sometimes at these protests, and we saw it a few years ago. That's why SRG is there, to make sure that doesn't happen. So if you
Tom,
take
that's
that away,
something that Jeff and I talk about repeatedly, because
singing our songs.
The First Amendment gives you the right for peaceful assembly.
Right.
It doesn't say anything about the word protest.
Right.
It's peaceful assembly, and that is not what is taking place. It is violent protest, which is not a guarantee of the First Amendment.
Right. It's really an insidious mindset that plagues us, and part of the reason is leaders like Mamdani perpetuate that myth that if it's labeled as a protest, you have a First Amendment right to do it, regardless of the time, place, or manner of it. And people just don't even understand that. It's the simplest thing. It drives me crazy.
Both of us.
So what was the morale? Well, when Mamdani won the election, my understanding is, the police were very worried. There was a morale drop. I think a certain amount of people resigned back in the fall. There's the statistic there that we're flashing at the bottom. I haven't been following the situation in New York very closely, so I'm wondering, between Mondami winning the election and this snowball controversy that we're discussing, have there been any other incidents or any other signs of how morale is?
Well, morale can change from day to day, no matter depending on what's going on in the city and in the NYPD. But I think he started off a couple of weeks ago with the incident where the officer was getting charged at by a guy with a huge steak knife that tried to plunge it into his neck or his chest. And the officer did everything he could not for that situation to get to where it was, backed up, kept him in a room. And then at one point, the officer had to defend himself and shot this individual who was charging at him with a knife. And what happened? Mamdani goes and visits the bad guy in the hospital. And
we showed that video on the show.
Right. Yeah. And doesn't talk to the cops, and then gets on camera and says he shouldn't go to jail. There should be no charges. This is why this is why that. No.
He said, he should be treated as a mental health problem rather than as a crime.
Okay. But, okay, I get that. But mental health individuals commit crimes also in trying to kill people. And that's what he did. And if that officer didn't react the right way, and I watched that body cam, he did absolutely everything right. Every single step he took was correct. If he didn't do that, look what the outcome would have been. And then what would he had said? Right. What did you, and again, when I get to the press, when I get to the media, that's what I get. When I said before, no one stood in front of him and went, what'd you want the cop to do, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, right.
No one asked him that. What would you want to see in that situation? Because there's no way he could answer that, because he doesn't know how situations like that happen, how they're handled, and the professionalism and training that officer exhibited was as perfect as you can get.
Tom, go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
You go first, Chris.
In Hartford, there were two shootings involving, ironically, both of them involving, a mentally, whatever you ever call emotionally disturbed person. I don't know what the term they used to use for over in New York, but emotionally disturbed person with a knife. One was inside a residence, one was out on the street. They both basically ended up the same way, being shot by responding police officers after minutes and minutes of verbal judo and negotiation. There was even a taser deployed unsuccessfully in the second shooting. But I remember this was, of course, on Facebook, it becomes a hot topic and everyone has their opinion. And, one woman had made the remark, well, you're being paid to risk your life. This is, what you're supposed to do. And I came back and I said, you're being paid to risk your life, not sacrifice your life.
Yeah, that's a distinction.
The thing is, it's ridiculous to think someone has to wait to be stabbed before they can use deadly force. Right. And that's the point that's lost on these people. They want to sit back from the comfort of their homes and opine on what better tactics and strategy could be employed, but never would ever consider going out and trying to do that type of work.
No way. I mean, 90% of this country wouldn't do what law enforcement has to do.
Correct.
And, but that's our decision. I'm not degrading anyone for not doing our job. Everyone's got a job to do. This is what we were comfortable doing. We know the risks. We understand what our job was or is, and we're okay with that. But the people who would never do this, like you just said, Greg, in a million years, get to sit back and slow down a body cam and reverse it and go backwards and Monday morning quarterback it to the last degree. And it's not like that. These incidents happen in seconds,
in real time. And that's,
Well, let's talk about, about what you think about before you go into the law enforcement profession. You're saying, that you go into it with your eyes open, but I wonder how many police officers have thought about how many people are mentally ill. Now, Mondami just brought it up, but that makes me think, he says it as if it's a relatively small percentage, but from where I sit, it seems to me like there's a lot of mentally ill people out there. I would imagine that in prisons, for example, a lot of them, it's a matter of degrees. Not are they mentally ill, but a matter of degrees, because these crimes they're committing are like sociopathic crimes.
Yep.
Listen to me use a word like that, but I mean, and in recent years, homelessness has become a big deal. I used to live in Los Angeles and Long Beach right before I moved to North Carolina. And I saw usually when where you are, things get worse. You don't notice it because you're there. But it was getting worse so quickly, so severely. I actually noticed it before my eyes, like in real time. It's just getting worse and worse. More mentally ill people on the streets. And they were using up police and fire resources all the time. And I would say to myself, I doubt that many police officers had this in mind when they entered the profession. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Listen, you learn the job as you go along in the job. You can sit in an academy and have an instructor tell you, yeah, mental illness is part of your job and dealing with it. Okay, great. Until you get out there and experience it, that's when you're going to realize how much of it there is. And like you just said, Jeff, you're so right. There's levels. There's different aspects of it. There's people that just kind of go over that line for the day because they didn't take their medication. Then there's severe mental illness. There's drug illness. There's alcoholism. There's homelessness. There's all that get wrapped up into just the overall umbrella of mental illness. And each of them are different. They're handled different. And each of them have a different level of violence that you have to deal with. And, what I just laid out is what the average cop showing up to a scene has to figure out in about 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Everything I just laid out over, a minute or two, cops have to try to figure out in seconds of how they're going to deal with this. And
Jeff,
that's why.
Yeah. Jeff, when you made the remark about the incarcerated population, the level of mental illness, I mean, when you think about it, with rare exception, almost anyone that is doing prison time for a crime probably suffers from some degree or level of mental illness, because no matter what crime category, if it's an arsonist, if it's a pedophile, if it's a serial burglar, if it's a rapist, anybody who does that, with intention has some degree of mental illness. I mean, that's my opinion. Unless, like Tom mentioned, drug dependency, maybe alcoholism, but outside of those, I mean, I think anybody who's in there for a violent crime suffers from some level or degree of mental illness.
So if we were at an imaginary or a real press conference with Mondami asking him questions that Tom says he never gets asked, I think my question in response to what he said about treating the guy with the knife as a mental health issue is, well, which crimes would not be treated as a mental health issue? He says it like it's a small percentage, but he's talking about a sea change, like a major sea change. And what we going to suddenly have mental health professionals enforcing the law?
Well, that was one thing he put forward, one of his plans, and it's still out there, of not having police officers respond to mental health calls and have psychologists show up and mental health people show up. That's one of the most dangerous things he's saying in part of his policy overlook, because when you go to a mental health issue or domestic violence call, and that was another one he wanted to send these professionals in there. They're the most dangerous calls you can go on as a trained police officer. Now you're going to send in a 25-year-old kid who just graduated college into this situation and has no means to defend themselves. no means to, act on something of an aggressive
Was
part.
he really, just to be fair to him, was he saying send these shrinks in by themselves or in partnership with the police?
No. He wanted them to go so it could free up the police to do other things.
How many police officers are there in the New York police?
Right now it's about 34,000, 35,000, which is about 7,000 less than there should be.
So if he wants, I think he would need about 30,000 mental health. He would need about 30,000 shrinks to take over.
But it's not even that, Jeff. It's the danger of it. You're walking into a situation that is dangerous for, like I said, armed, trained police officers that get hurt all the time at domestic violence cases, domestic violent calls. Now you're going to send someone in there that's not trained that way. And, his explanation of, well, it frees the police up to do other things. Like what? What else are we doing? If we're not there, we're going to another call. That's what I mean. The explanations aren't holding water.
Tom, interestingly enough, when I mentioned those two Hartford incidents that took place just last week, the indoor one was responded to by two mental health workers that asked for police backup because they realized that the person was violent and had initially was threatening to throw boiling water on them, and then ended up with a knife. And that's when the police sort of traded places and ended up shooting the mentally disturbed person because there was no reasoning with them. I mean, I think they were in there for close to an hour, I believe, when I read the article, and it just deteriorated, didn't get any better, and then eventually he lunged with a knife, and the police shot him. But the video, the body cam footage, there's a lot of people in a small apartment, which is not a good thing. Number one, it makes it even more dangerous. And then it devolved to the point where the police end up having to shoot.
Yeah. But here's the thank God part, Greg. The knife didn't come out till the police got there. Not that you want to see a knife once they get there, but what I'm saying is, if that started with just that healthcare professional, now you have a hostage situation. Now you have a barricaded EDP with a hostage. I mean, then it becomes a completely different issue.
Well, then you just get another shrink to come and deal with that.
Well, it just goes from bad to worse.
Right. Absolutely right. Yep.
Well, let me ask both of you another question about not only the type of person that goes into the law enforcement profession, but where they choose to work. Now, I assume a lot of cops choose to work where they live. But other than that, we talked about the difference between Branford, Connecticut, where Greg worked, and New York City. How many cops choose it based on they want to see a lot of action? So even though it's more dangerous in New York, they might want to go there versus a suburban or a rural location.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And a lot of it is family history like me. I was born in New York City and lived there for the first 9 years of my life and then moved north of the city. But my dad was an NYPD detective, and I grew up in that world, and I grew up wanting to be like him. So then I went back down to the city, and that has a lot to do with a lot of decisions that are made when you have your family as part of the NYPD. That's where you tend to go. But nowadays, there's a lot of different factors than when me and Greg started. Now the pay is much better in other departments. The, things you get, the add-ons are better in other departments, vacations, weather, all that. It's very inviting to, most of us start your career 22, 23, 24 years old. So when you have the possibility of being in a really nice town with nice weather, maybe in another state, those are decisions that have to be made now. So the reasons that I went there or Greg started where it was and then went to the FBI are way different today than they were when we started.
Although, Jeff, just so you don't have me labeled as Barney Fife. I did do 5 years in Washington, D.C. Several of those years, it was considered the murder capital of the world, with the highest homicide rate per capita at one time. So I was starting to feel a little disrespected there.
I'm sorry if I made it seem like that's what I was suggesting. It's just Branford, though, is a good example. All right, so we'll take you out of it. Are there many people who come from the suburbs who choose to work in a city police department because they want to see a lot of action, and vice versa? Are there many people who maybe grew up in a city who want to move, work for a suburban or a rural police department?
Yeah, I think it's a little of both. And the draw to the NYPD, Jeff, is there's so many opportunities to do so many different things. I mean, there's a detail and a unit for everything you're thinking of doing. And that's a big part of joining the NYPD. The benefits are next to none, vacation time, all that. And you're in the city. We used to say, and I was on a show last week and it came up again, we have a front row seat to the greatest show on earth. And that's what, that's a big draw to it too. You're going to see things. And the other part of it is you're going to learn, and you're going to learn real fast about how to be a cop, how to handle yourself, and which is going to either propel you to maybe move on to something different or get you ready for your next assignment in the NYPD.
But Tom, it's interesting you say that, and I remember when I was coming out of college, my first actual job was working in the courthouse as a deputy sheriff. So it was basically courtroom security and prisoner transportation. And one of the kids I went to high school with, he went to the New Haven Police Department right at the same time I was going to the Branford Police Department, and we would get together on occasion and compare sort of our experiences and our stories. And I always enjoyed the fact that because I was on a smaller department, I was getting to investigate crimes that he would never be able to investigate because, even though we were both patrolmen at the time, I said, gee, I investigated an armed robbery at a convenience store last week. And he's like, oh, no, that goes to our robbery squad.
Right.
And I was like, and I said, I made an investigation into a car arson, and I said, I ended up making an arrest on it. He's like, well, that goes to the arson squad. and we kept going back and forth on our different stories. I was like, well, I've investigated like 3 burglaries last week. He goes, well, that goes to the burglary unit. So at the end of the conversation, I said, what are you doing other than putting up crime tape? I said, because I'm investigating robberies, burglaries, sexual assaults, stolen cars, arsons, and you're telling me you're going there and you're holding the scene until the right unit shows up to investigate it. So I thought the irony was, even though I was working in a smaller town, I was actually getting hands-on experience investigating a wide variety of crimes that he was never able to follow up on.
Yeah, absolutely right. And that's a great example because, in the NYPD, you're so busy. I mean, when you're in uniform, you're going from job to job to job, and a busy night can just it's like an avalanche. You don't have time to do anything much. Try to eat. That's a good point. If you can get a meal in, while you're running around. And that's what I said. There's so many units in the NYPD that give people opportunities to move on, and move up the ranks, to detective and sergeant, lieutenant, all that. And that was a big draw, other than my dad, obviously, just wanting to go to the NYPD. It's the only department I want to go to. But part of the draw was how many, the options you have while you're there. And today there's even more.
Sure.
There's even more than there were back then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I hope you guys don't mind. I would like to ask a question about something that happened 12 years ago in New York. And I've always wondered about this. I actually asked Greg about this a few months ago, and he dug something up for me, which partially answered the question. I'm referring to the Eric Garner chokehold incident. Tom, you were a member of the department when that happened. I think it was in 2014.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure how familiar you are with it. I'm sure you know about it. The thing that I wonder about is why all the emphasis was on the chokehold, and almost nothing was paid. Almost nobody paid any attention to whether or not the police were justified in stopping him. It seemed to me they didn't really have reasonable suspicion to stop him. Let me just show a clip so people know what we're talking about.
It would normally have been a routine arrest in the New York City borough of Staten Island. A man suspected by police of selling cigarettes on the street. He's the man you'll see in a moment in the video with his hands up as police encircle him. That's when things go wrong, and he was later pronounced dead. And now New York's emergency services have a big problem on their hands. Our report tonight from NBC's Ron Mott.
So I'm especially wondering, like, why all the people who took the side of, being police watchdogs, who whose thing is to criticize the police, they didn't even ask it as a question, it seemed, let alone claim that there was no reasonable suspicion. The guy was not selling cigarettes at that moment. They didn't find any cigarettes on him. Nobody called it in. No shop owner or anybody else called up to report it. Apparently, I think what you dug up, Greg, was one of the cops claimed to have seen him doing it, which I don't buy at all. Can you shed any more insight on that? You see what I'm curious about, what I'm wondering about, Tom?
Yeah, I do. And I'll just caveat it with this real quick. In 2014, I know where I was in JTTF and what I was doing, and probably didn't pay a lot of attention to what was going on the street. And I'm not deflecting the question, just giving you a little context of where I was at the time and not on the street and not doing, the regular NYPD stuff by any stretch. But, I'm going to give cops the benefit of the doubt with something like this because, and here's why, not just being a cop and backing them up, because I almost never had a situation where I've seen cops just go, yeah, him. Yeah, let's just do this. There's a reason for it. There's a build up to it. There was maybe something mentioned about what was going on there or something to do with him. So
he had a reputation. The guy was somebody who sold cigarettes illegally on the street.
Right.
So what I'm saying is it looks just like they were harassing him because they knew about his reputation.
Yeah. And you know what? If you listen, back when I was on patrol, a big thing was telling people, hey, you're not hanging out here. Go do something somewhere else. Walk, get lost, find a new place to hang out. But sometimes when you had those situations and you had the one or two people who went, I ain't moving. Okay, now it's going to be a confrontation because now you're disobeying a lawful order to disperse and move and not impede, pedestrian traffic and all that. And when you get into something like that, things can spiral out of control very quickly. When you have someone that's resisting, that becomes a problem. And he was a big guy. I mean, you could see the size of him. So
absolutely. And that's why I think a little too much emphasis was made of the illegal chokehold because his chest was enormous. Mm-hmm. So to say, well, you didn't use the right technique when somebody is resisting, it would be impossible to wrap one's arms around that guy's chest. The arms would automatically go up to the neck. I mean, I'm not saying that they did the right thing exactly, but it's just a little too much emphasis on the chokehold and not enough on, well, why did they even stop him?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And
nobody else even remembers that. I'm sorry. It's my own little thing. It's
Jeff has a fixation on that one case.
Yeah, I don't know why. The other thing is it makes me think like the activists aren't that sharp because they didn't even seize that issue at all. It's like,
well, listen,
if your thing is to criticize the police, how can you leave that out? It's not like there's a big long list and they got everything else. It was just the chokehold and that, and they missed one of the two issues.
Right. I mean, activists are going to, be targeted on the end result, and unfortunately, the end result was his death. No, listen, there's no cop. I'm telling you this. 30 years, and Greg's going to say the same exact thing. There's no cop that goes to work on any given day wants to take someone's life. No one wants to do that. Whether it's with your firearm, whether it's in a fight, whatever it is. No cop wants to do that. You're not sitting around the locker room going, all right, hey, this is what we're going to do tonight. That doesn't happen. So no cop wants to be in that situation that guy ended up, being. And it was one of those just unfortunate incidents, and you wish you could, turn back time and turn the clock back, but unfortunately we can't.
All right, let me ask you something else that may or may not be your bailiwick, but I think it's more so because it does involve at least a suggestion for a joint task force. And at least this one is in the news now. So I want to ask you to remember something from 14 years ago. All this talk about the alleged crimes committed in the Epstein world, most of them involve state crimes, having sex with a minor and so forth. Terrible thing, but it's not a federal offense. It's a state crime. And, rape is a state crime. Murder, of course, I'm just trying to make the point that I'm not arguing that it's not severe. It's just not a federal offense. It's a state crime. Yet everybody's clamoring for the federal government to do something. And there was one exception. It was Jamie Raskin, a guy who I don't even like, suggested that a joint task force be set up between the Department of Justice and local police departments to investigate whatever is worthy of being investigated. Does that make sense to you, Tom? Is that a good idea?
Well, let's just back up a second. There's state charges unless you cross a state line. Yeah. And you have to remember, some of the girls in that were with Jeffrey Epstein were on planes going to different states, going to different islands, to different countries. That makes it a federal human trafficking law. And that's why the feds want to or should have been involved.
Well, I understand that, but maybe I should have clarified that. That is a thing too, but the majority of allegations are for state crimes. And when you're talking about trafficking, there was Jeffrey Epstein, who's now dead or very similar to dead. He's probably dead. And Ghislaine Maxwell is already convicted. So I don't think there are too many other people. I can't imagine that Bill Gates, for example, was in business trafficking with him. The majority, but Jeffrey Gates, what did I say? Not Jeffrey Gates. What's his name?
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates, yeah. And I'm not making this accusation, but it's within the realm of possibility that Gates maybe went to some property and had sex with a minor or something like that. I could see that happening, but I don't think he was in the trafficking business with him. That's what most of the allegations are state crimes.
Mm-hmm. No, that I understand. And when you get to, the suggestion of the task force, here's like me looking at it from, 30,000 feet. Why didn't you do this 10, 15 years ago? When you knew what he was doing and you had the ability to go, all right, hey, let's get a task force together to see what he's doing, who's involved, where they're going, all that. You're doing it later when you just laid out, Jeff. No one else, it's not happening anymore. So what are you spending money on a task force and the resources that are going to go into it to come up with what result? What's going to be the end result? I'm one of those, unfortunately, you want to see there should be people going to jail that contributed to this, that were part of this, that, what the abuse level was with some girls, you have to be held accountable. Prince Andrew's going through that right now. He ain't the only one. There's more that should be out there, because if you're going to respect victims, there's a lot of victims involved in this. All right. A lot. And you're accountable for your actions. And if your actions are illegal, you have to pay the price for that.
But ironically, Tom, Prince Andrew was in the jackpot for not for sexual crimes or offenses, but because he was apparently sharing classified or privileged information with Epstein. So it's kind of ironic that his downfall was indirectly because of his sexual dalliance, I guess.
Right. You're right.
All right. Well, we have a segment that we do every week, Tom, called Has It Happened to Greg? and we look at videos of police encounters, talk about it, and ask Greg if anything like that has happened to him. If you're not out of time, can you want to hang out with us for a few more minutes and
Sure.
join us with it? All right. Before we do that, we had a question from Helen. Actually, even before the show started, she's asking. Well, in her words, I'm wondering, given the situation in Iran, what is Greg's opinion on how police officers function under attack conditions? And I'm assuming what she means is how do civilian police departments operate when they're in a war zone? I think that's what she means. Yeah. How would you guys interpret that question? And Helen, you can just give us another live chat clarification if we're not understanding the question.
I mean, Tom, I'll share that with you, but I mean, I think really we're going to treat, I guess, a condition like that like we would treat any natural disaster or any catastrophic event. I mean, we're not equipped like the military. Our rules of engagement are different than the military's. So, we're first responders that are going to respond the way we're trained, and it's going to be different than the military.
Right. I mean, just rewind the clock 25 years, look at 9/11. That it was not a military response. That was completely first responders, yep. Fire department, police department, and everyone saw what we did. And that's the response that you would get. It's securing locations, securing, the area that you have to go into, treating victims, trying to recover victims,
setting up evacuation routes.
Right.
And, yeah.
All of that is what would take place anywhere.
All right. Well, Helen hasn't jumped in with any clarification, so maybe she's not watching now, but.
Or we answered the question.
And yeah, right. Why don't I assume that instead? Yes. Nothing. No need for clarification. We nailed it. All right. Has it happened to Greg? Let's do it. All right, we have 3 videos this week, and let's go straight to the first one.
Ooh. Hey, how are you? Good. Your backlights are completely off.
Are you serious?
Her taillights never worked. She's always driving around in the dark, or her headlights were always out.
I don't understand that.
That's Christina Latosky behind the wheel of her 1996 red Chevy Camaro.
Your brake lights work, but not the taillights.
For the same thing, always. Taillights on a car, the headlights on the car.
And coincidentally, it was always Officer Platty who pulled her over, no fewer than 4 times.
So it was an easy traffic stop every time.
Everything's still valid and good? Your driver's license, everything? Okay.
But this time would be different. Officer Platty's patrol car computer said Christina was a wanted woman for failing to appear in court.
Christina? Yeah. I need you to come over here. I have to detain you because you have a warrant out of Jackson.
Christina's night was about to become anything but routine with the familiar cop she called Platty.
Can I look in your car?
I don't care, Platty.
That search proved pivotal.
So what is this?
What is it? I can't even see, Platty.
That looks like meth, Christina.
That, honestly, Platty, I really don't know.
Christina was put in handcuffs and read her rights.
Okay, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in the court of law.
I remember standing in front of his patrol car that night, and I just looked at him. I said, Platty, I'm done. I can't do it no more. Please, just put me in the car and just take me to jail. I'm done.
Christina spent the next 3 months in jail, followed by 3 months in rehab for what she calls a 25-year addiction to methamphetamine and alcohol. She says her arrest on August 4th, 2024, on that dark rural road was just the beginning of her road to recovery.
He's always going to be a big part of my recovery.
Inspiring Christina to put pen to paper.
To the officer who saved my life, you probably don't remember me, just another traffic stop on just another night. But I remember that night. You changed everything.
If it wasn't for you making that traffic stop, I have no doubt in my mind my children would be motherless because I would be dead.
4 pages of gratitude that revealed something Officer Platty didn't know about that fateful night.
I actually had planned on wrapping my car around a tree.
That tree just a short walk away from the local cemetery Christina frequently visited to contemplate life.
Because of you, I'm alive. I'm here and I'm continuing to work on my sobriety every day. Thank you. I'll forever be grateful for you. It was exactly what any officer would want to read, knowing the impact they make just by doing their job.
See, I've heard of stories like that where people, bottom out, so to speak, and then they go to prison and that they get their act together. But I'm sure you guys have heard of that too. But have either of you ever encountered somebody that you arrested expressing gratitude later, thanking you for straightening out their lives?
I think it's unusual for someone to reconnect, with the officer. I would like to think that when you interrupt that cycle with an arrest, that sometimes it does work out where they get the help that they need. But I think it's rare that it actually comes back to your attention that that's what happened. But I'd love to see a story like that. I wish they put that on the news, every week.
Yeah, there's probably a lot more of those out there that, like you just said, Greg, no one hears about. There's probably a lot of them. I think you remember, once in a while something would happen, you'd show up, and maybe the next day you'd see a kid that was there say, "Hey, thanks for last night. Thanks for showing up." Something like that was always a good reminder of why you were out there.
Yeah. Jeff, I remember I had a drunk driver one night. It was a young kid, and he wasn't a stumbling, falling down drunk, but there was enough there that I suspected that he was under the influence, and I arrested him. And the reason I bring it up, two things: he had one blue eye and one green eye, which I've never seen before, and the other thing was he blew the highest BAC that anyone had ever seen. And no one could believe that he was conscious with that blood alcohol contact in his system. And we even retested him thinking that there was a problem with the machine, but he said, no. He said he probably drank like a fifth of vodka that day. And he said he had been drinking for like 7 years, like since he was 12 or maybe 9 years. And I said, geez, I said, your level of intoxication is off the charts. I said, and you're like 20 years old. I'm like, how are you alive at this point? And he's like, my body got used to it. And I felt terrible because he was young and he wasn't a disagreeable person. He was friendly. And like a month later, I read in the paper that he had died on the New Haven Green. He froze to death. He was so intoxicated, he fell asleep. And next morning, the grounds crew that comes out there and cleans found him on the bench dead. And I was thinking, the system had failed him because he had been arrested several times for driving under the influence, but never got the help that he needed.
But what could the system have done?
Well, something. I don't know. I guess remand him to a custodial facility where he would have to break that cycle of drinking somehow. But he was a stone
I don't even know
cold.
how often those facilities actually are successful.
Yeah, but he was a stone cold alcoholic at a young age.
Yeah. Well, Tom, I think you said something like you wished it happened more often. But maybe we're talking about the same thing. I'm not sure, but I'm saying I think I've heard a lot actually that people say it did them good, to bottom out. But what I haven't heard is that they then go back and thank the cop.
Yeah. Listen, once you hit rock bottom, there's only one direction, and that's what a lot of people say. So sometimes that is the best course when you do hit rock bottom, to get back up and start going upward. What I meant, not every story reaches the news that more people can hear about it. That's what I meant. I wish it would happen more on a news level, that more people can hear those stories.
Right. All right. We were talking earlier about disrespecting the police in New York. Here's another example, not in New York, but I don't know where this happened at least. This is a teenager acting tough when confronted with a police officer.
What's up, man? What's up? What's up? What car you in? I ain't in any of these
So let's go. Then you got to get out. Let's go.
Nah, I don't got to go nowhere.
You live here?
I don't got. Yeah, I live here. You don't got.
Okay,
what
your
you
address?
walking up on me like that for? What's up?
What's your address?
Take that vest off. Come on.
Take that vest off for me.
Come on. Take that vest off. You know. Come on. Take that off. Let's get it. Let's get it, bro. What's up? What's up?
Where do you live?
Your partner here like he's gonna do something. You ain't gonna do. Take it off and do something about it. You like I won't.
Like you what? Like you want what?
I ain't gonna say nothing on that camera.
What
so
are you
I'm
gonna
saying,
do?
take that off.
What are you
Take
gonna
it off. You see.
Okay, take it off and see.
Yeah.
Let me get your ID.
You ain't gonna get.
Okay.
Take it off and you see. Well, what you laughing for? I'm right in your. Take it off.
Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back. Stop resisting. Put your hands behind your back.
All right, now that kind of surprised me because the cop was just laughing at him at first, and I don't really blame him on one level for doing that, but I am a little bit unsure. What is it that legally justified the cop making that move from just laughing at him? Was it because he stepped too close to him, or is that what it is?
Breach of cop.
Right. Yep.
Well, Jeff, when they close the distance, that's an aggressive sign, and you don't necessarily have to wait to get hit before you can protect yourself.
Right. Yeah, no, I wouldn't argue with that. It's just it's surprising because you see how he's laughing, and he's like,
Well,
so
sometimes
that
you get
that one step, that one little step, right? That was it.
Yep. Sometimes you get into situations that you're even befuddled. Like, is this really happening? and you just, one of your mechanisms is just to laugh at it. But Greg's right. I remember back in the academy, you were taught if you think you're going to get hit, you act first. You don't wait till you get hit. And him taking that one step towards him, that's enough.
All right. So I guessed correctly. All right. We have one more. There was a shootout in San Jose. I can't remember when, a couple or so months ago, but the body cam footage was just released. So this is in the news now in San Jose. So this is taken from a local news report.
The life and death gun battle, and it played out on a busy San Jose street. Tonight, we're getting our first look at the heart-pounding body camera video of a deadly shootout that happened in January. When all was said and done, a police sergeant was wounded and the suspect dead. NBC Barrier's Damon Trujillo spent the day poring through the video. I should warn you, you might find it disturbing.
Are you guys okay?
Damon Trujillo
Disturbing footage? You okay? Do you need to take a tranquilizer or anything? Okay, I was making a little joke there. Sorry.
Pouring through the video. I should warn you, you might find it disturbing.
A life and death moment at the end of a two-county police chase involving an armed man. San Jose Police Sergeant Gerardo Silva has just exited his patrol car to confront the suspect when he was shot on the hand.
Big 10, I'm shot.
The sergeant continues his gunfight with Mohammed Hussein, a man who police say had just been on a 4-day crime spree that included several armed robberies, at least one carjacking, and the gunfight with another police agency. Silva is hit again, this time in the head, but continued to fight. The video shows officers rushing to his aid.
Let's go to the hospital, let's go! Hospital.
As more officers arrive, more gunfire, caught on multiple body-worn cameras. In the end, officers unleashed a barrage of bullets on the suspect, firing before and after a police cruiser ran him over.
It looked like a Hollywood movie, but it happened on the streets of San Jose, and Hollywood movies are scripted. What happened was very unscripted and chaotic.
Legal analyst Stephen Clark is among those watching the video released by police today. There are several routine investigations underway for the shooting by the DA, Internal Affairs, and the independent police auditor. Clark, a former prosecutor, says he sees nothing criminal by the officers that day, even the decision to keep shooting after he's hit by a patrol cruiser.
You can always second guess the implementation of deadly force, but I don't see anything that would cause a DA to say, look, we need to pursue criminal charges against any particular officer.
I actually became somewhat emotional watching it. It was an event that every police officer fears will come.
Mike Leninger spent almost 3 decades with San Jose police. What sticks out to him is the tactical response from the officers, noting no civilians were struck by that hail of gunfire. He notes the officers had the presence of mind to react in the midst of chaos.
Ceasefire! Crossfire! 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 Ceasefire!
They looked for crossfire. They looked for officers that were in front of them. In the entire time, they have a suspect with a firearm trying to run who tried to kill another police officer.
At the center of it all was Sergeant Silva, wounded twice. He was released from the hospital the next day. Now many are calling for the chief to award him the Medal of Valor.
Is shot and injured, reacts, still maintains his composure, is shot again, still maintains his composure, and knows that he is in a fight for his life. He also knows that he is in a fight for all those people seated in their cars watching this go down.
Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News.
That's something, huh? Being shot twice and then
Remarkable that he stayed in the fight after being shot in the hand. You know, there's not many officers, I think, that would be able to participate at an effective level after being wounded.
I'm a little bit more impressed with being shot in the head, as far as surviving, anyway. I mean,
well, that could have been a fragmentation from the vehicle, but whatever. Yeah.
But it just shows again, you know, just how fast things happen. I mean, he didn't even get out of his car and he got shot.
Yeah.
You know, that's how these events sometimes happen. And they did a good job with containing, you know, where he was. And, you know, he's lucky to be alive. I mean, there's numerous officers who didn't get hit that day that are lucky to be alive.
I wanted to see the vehicle take him out.
I've seen that video, that event that happened. I've seen like another angle.
Oh, Tom, I know what you're talking about. Then I didn't realize it was the same one.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. Yes,
he gets lit. Yeah.
Yeah, right. He gets knocked down by the car, and then he gets lit up after that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's
he
a
still
good
had
one.
the gun. Well, the gun was right near him still.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing is, I mean, what are you going to do? Charge somebody with shooting a dead body? I mean, there's no real crime there, I don't think.
Right. Well, there's still a threat.
Discussing that issue in regard to the Minneapolis shooting, that if the first shot is legal, then everyone after it is also legal, right? There's no such thing as being two dead.
Right. Until the threat's eliminated and the threat stops.
Right. So have either of you ever been shot?
Not shot at. I was in a very large shooting in 1993, and one of our cops got shot during it. He survived, but confronting 3 individuals who robbed a supermarket right in the middle of Broadway in the middle of the afternoon. And that was quite a scene.
Yeah. How about you, Greg?
2 years before I retired, I had a round go by my head by about 2 inches.
Ooh.
In the gun cleaning room.
In the gun cleaning room?
Yeah. After firearms qualification.
What happened?
One of my colleagues didn't realize that he had a round in his pistol, and he pulled the trigger while he was cleaning it.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's the last way you expect to be shot.
Right. And we're sitting across from each other at the table. So, I mean, it was probably 5 feet away and probably less than a foot away from the side of my head. Yeah.
Unfortunately, that is not the first time I've heard a story like that.
Did you forgive him?
What are you going to do?
That's
You're here.
All right. Another great episode of Probable Cause comes to a close. Thank you so much, Tom. Your podcast that you do with Dan Murphy, is your co-host as good as mine? It's hard to believe that.
It's, you know what? I got to, Greg's great, but Dan's my partner. So,
Well, Dan is great, but Greg is my partner.
Yep. And Dan and I mean, Dan, he's my partner in the show. Dan and I have been friends for about 25, 26 years.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
He was my partner and my sergeant in the gang unit in the Bronx, and then we both went to JTTF together, and he was my sergeant again.
Nice.
Yeah,
Good
I
partnership.
checked out your podcast.
Yes.
You guys have a good rapport. You're both very articulate without being like slick. You have that New York authenticity, but you're not just D's and dumbs guys. You are very well spoken.
We have a good time doing the show. We have a very fun time.
What part of me? I can tell by the way you're talking. You were born in New York. What part?
Up in Inwood, just north of Washington Heights.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. You're welcome anytime, and we appreciate it. And thanks, Greg, and thanks to our beloved audience. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m., Ask the Inspector with Scott Ritter, and then Thursday night, The Whiners, also at 7 p.m. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you very much, guys.
Okay.
Bye-bye.